أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وأفضل الصلاة وتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. We ask Allah that He bless us in the month of Ramadan. We ask Allah that He grants us a beautiful journey with His book in this month. We ask Allah that for each one of us, we witness and we experience in this world and the hereafter the promise of the Prophet ﷺ that whoever fasts Ramadan in faith and in hope of reward, that all of their previous sins will be forgiven, and that whoever stands at night in prayer in the month of Ramadan in faith and in hope of reward, that all of their previous sins will be forgiven. The Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ was to spend more time with the Qur'an in the month of Ramadan. That was in his qiyam as the companions joined him for a few days before he told them to worship on their own out of fear that it would be made obligatory upon them out of his mercy for his Ummah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as in so many other matters, that he was concerned that the Ummah not be given obligations that they could not live up to. And so he lived with the Qur'an at night in his prayers, and he encouraged that among his companions. And he established that as a sunnah that they followed individually until the time of Sayyidina Umar, when he instituted it for the community at large. And he reviewed the Qur'an in its entirety with Jibreel alayhi salam every year, twice, until the year, every year in the month of Ramadan, until the year of his passing, when he reviewed it twice with Jibreel alayhi salam and sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. The sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is to renew our relationship with the Qur'an in this month. And as a starting point in reflecting on how we go about that, we might mention one of the things that it's a theme in the relationship of the companions with the tabi'een, that the companions who lived a long time and became some of the last surviving companions, it was their responsibility to ensure that the message is being passed on with integrity, that it's being understood and put into practice appropriately. And in many ways, we see in too many, more than we can count, that they would point out things, whether in practice or whether in understanding, that needed adjustment and needed a course correction in the following generation. And probably the thing that they pointed out most frequently was the nature of the relationship of the tabi'een to the Qur'an. And Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Umar, he would say, we were given Iman before the Qur'an. And because of that, we would only proceed forward in learning it and in memorizing it and in reciting it once we had absorbed the teachings of the latest revelation in full into practice. And then we would move on. After we understood the halal and haram, after we understood the limits of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he said to the tabi'een, and it sounds harsh, but sometimes the harshest corrections come out of love. He said, you all treat the Qur'an like low quality dates. Meaning what? He said, you read it from its beginning to its end without absorbing anything. You read it from its beginning to its end without being transformed by it in the way that we as a generation were transformed by it. And it wasn't just Abdullah ibn Umar, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, Aisha, Salama, and others. They all made statements like this to the tabi'een. They would tell them, slow down in your recitation. A tabi'i would come and say, almost as a point of pride, I recited thus and such amount in one rak'ah at night. And they would say, are you reciting the Qur'an like you recite poetry? Are you just... The Prophet ﷺ would stop and he would reflect. And Salama said every ayah, he had a pause. The companions were a generation who were transformed inside and out by the Qur'an. Internally, externally, their inner states, the way that they viewed the world, and their choices, their priorities, and what they did. The Qur'an was at the center of their individual lives and their communal experiences. And they did not want the tabi'een to treat the Qur'an simply as a recitation, simply as a book, simply as something that has two covers and you move through it without being transformed by it. For them, they were transformed by it, they absorbed it in their hearts before it was ever put in between two covers. That was a decision that they made collectively later on, understanding their task to preserve the Qur'an. And part of that task was to help that generation to understand that this is a book that needs to transform you. And if it does not transform you, then there's something amiss in your relationship to it. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the outset of this month that in the month of Ramadan, we renew our faith, that we renew our relationship with Him, that we renew our relationship with His book and with His Messenger, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Jazakum Allahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.